Hey, welcome back to the channel. And thank you so much to all the subscribers for supporting the channel. And if you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button down below because it costs you nothing and it supports the channel. Guess what we're going to talk about today? I am going to talk about the life of an organ. So what happens when you remove an organ from your body? And I am going to dump a ton of information on you in a really short time. So hold on to your seats and let's get started. Okay, so we're going to cover 6 things. And the first thing we're going to cover is Western medicine and disposable organs. The second thing we're going to cover is Chinese medicine and the energy trilogy. And the third thing is the organs. Where do they start and stop? And the fourth thing is going to be consciousness and the physical body. Fifth thing is physiology and the spirit of the organs. And then the sixth thing is failure. And how do you address that? Okay, ready? Let's get started. In the United States, we're kind of a throwaway society and things are disposable. And you can see that with what you buy. I mean, they're manufactured to be disposable. And this thought process that exists in the United States also transfers into Western medicine. So when it comes to removing body parts, what are the first ones to go? Well, the adenoids, the tonsils, the appendix, and the gallbladder. And when you look at those are all parts of your immune system. Now we know for sure adenoids, tonsils, appendix, all parts of our immune system, but the research is just coming out that the gallbladder is also a part of your immune system. And if you look at the first two, the adenoids and the tonsils, well, they're your first line of defense for any virus or bacteria entering through your mouth and your nose. Who knew, huh? Okay. Anyway, so part of Western medical thought is that you can remove certain organs because the body doesn't really need them. And you can do just fine without them. So, there's other reasons for why you might have to have an organ removed, like, a serious disease like cancer or a car accident. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when it appears that the organ is not functioning as you would like and it's causing you discomfort, and we get it removed. And this was a belief that I had to come face to face with when I was dealing with my gallbladder pain. And if any of you have had horrible gallbladder pain, well, for me, it was so bad. I swear that it was like that Viking blood eagle torture treatment where somebody was trying to rip my ribs out through my back. And so I was 100% willing to have my gallbladder removed. And it wasn't until my gastroenterologist was talking to me, and what he said is, I can remove it, but it doesn't mean the pain was going to go away. And that's when, I really had to face my belief that, yeah, my gallbladder is being really uncomfortable and really painful, and I'm really hating this, and I don't know how much longer I can bear this pain. But if he removes this and this pain comes back, and there's no way for me to easily identify how to correct this, I'm not going to like that either. And it also had me thinking about every one of my clients in clinic who have had their gallbladder removed. All of them, well, except for maybe a couple, all of them, their pain came back and it progressed and got worse as they got older. And, it might not have come back right away. For some of them, it took like 10 years. So for me, all of a sudden what he said made sense. It was like either I needed to address this right now, my belief that things are disposable. And even though it seems hard right now, I could address what was causing my gallbladder to go off instead of trying to address the symptom and remove the gallbladder. Or I could wait until I got older and try to address it at that time. And I've seen what happens to people who get older and try to address it. I have one client who's in her 80s, had a stroke, so she has slight dementia, and her gallbladder pain is full force. It came back. She had it removed like 20 years ago. And omeprazole, nothing can touch it anymore. And because of the dementia, because of her age, making changes at that time is really, really tough. And so she was trapped. She's trapped in this body that is just torture. And, it was things like that that started running through my head. And I started realizing that, maybe things are not as disposable as we think they are. Okay, so let's take a step back. Let's go to when you're born. So if you think about it, think about when you're born. You're a pretty little package, right? You're like 9 to 13 pounds, maybe 6 to 13 pounds. So you're this little package, and think about, whoever your creator is, whatever your belief in your higher power or how you got here, doesn't it seem kind of crazy that you have this really little package, and whoever your creator is like, I'm going to pack it with a whole lot of things that you don't need. I think about that because when I go on a trip for a week or a week and a half, and you want to take a little bag, I take everything I need. And I count out my shirts and I count out my pants so that I can switch them, they match. I go into a lot of detail to make sure that everything is there and it has a lot of flexibility. I don't pack anything that's not needed. So, think about that. You come in with this really little package, 6 to 13 pounds, and someone's going to pack in a lot of crap that you don't need. That just seems crazy. So I'm just saying, it just seems like everything we brought into this life, we actually needed. And if you can look at things like that, then this next part is going to be a lot easier. So everything we came in with, we actually need. So it's not really disposable. By the way, I did keep my gallbladder, and I'm managing it with Chinese nutritional therapy. So Chinese nutritional therapy is a little bit different, and its focus is understanding the healing properties of food so that you can strengthen areas that are weak and eliminate, toxins out of your body. Understand which foods will eliminate the toxins that are being created, in my gallbladder area. And the goal is to help you improve and maintain your wellness. Okay, so if you need everything and you remove something, then you're going to have to figure out how to replace that functionality, right? I bring up this concept of disposable because maybe it's not true. Perhaps you don't have disposable throwaway organs. And if that makes sense to you, well, then this next part will be a lot easier to understand. So let's talk about the organs in Chinese medicine and the trilogy related to the energetics of the organs. Now, I talk about the trilogy a lot in some of the different episodes. And, there's heaven, there's earth, and in between that is humanity. And you and I are humanity. So you and I sit between heaven and earth. And I talk about this in the Dao of Herbs. And you can find a link to that episode up here in the corner or in the video description below. Now, if you watch the Dao of Herbs, you know that heaven is yang and it has no form like sunlight. And earth is yin and it has form like the earth. And then there's you and I, and we sit in between heaven and earth, and we're the movement between these two. So between yin and yang, there's movement, and that movement is life. And I go into that in a lot more depth in the episode, The Power of Yin and Yang, the Creation of Life. And hopefully there's a link up here, but if you don't have that link, again, check in the video description below and you can find a link to that episode too. So when we're talking about energy, we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about functionality, and we're talking about movement. So heaven is consciousness. Functionality is the physical body, our ability to move. That's our physical body. And then the actual movement, being able to tell ourselves to move, that is you and I, that's chi. That's the energetics of chi, or the energetics of life. So the Trilogy postnatal creates 3 different types of energy in the body: the consciousness, the function, which is in the form, and then the movement, which is in the chi. And you can see this even if you look at yourself. You have a consciousness, and you don't really know what your consciousness is, but you're conscious, right? And then you have this form, this physical form that executes the functions. And then in order to get the movement to execute those functions, you have the chi in between, right? So you have consciousness, you have your physical body, which you have which is the functionality, and then you have chi, which is the energy, which allows you to communicate the intent of your consciousness to your physical body. It's like that go-between thing. Let's look at the start and stop of every organ. So in the West, we have the gallbladder and we have the spleen, and they're really defined organs in the body. And in Western medicine, if you have some disease in your liver, you can remove part of that liver, and the rest of the liver is going to function just fine without it. And that makes sense to us. But in East Asian medicine, the lines of the organ are not that defined, are not that clearly defined. So think about this. When you're studying the muscles of the body, you know how we identify each muscle as this finite muscle, your biceps right here, and they start and stop. And the reality is inside the body, we're just one big muscle. This muscle, it shrinks to a tendon, to ligament, and that ligament doesn't just cut off and stop there where it attaches. No, that ligament continues on, and it creates another tendon, and it goes into another muscle. And so every muscle in the body is one unified muscle of the body. So even though we learn these finite muscle groups in Western anatomy, they're really not finite muscle groups, right? It's just really one big muscle. That's why when you get low back pain, those back muscles start pulling down and start pulling on your neck muscles, and you start getting neck pain or shoulder pain or hip pain. It's because those muscles are all attached. So in the organs in Chinese medicine, it's a similar concept. It's not so finite. Even though we study finite definitions in Western medicine, in Chinese medicine, they're looking, in East Asian medicine, it's a bigger concept. Let's think about the organs. In East Asian medicine, you have the organs, they're attached to a meridian or a channel, and they occupy the space in your body. And let's just bring all of that into the definition of the organ. So instead of just being this one physical thing, it also has a meridian attached to it, and it also has the space that it occupies attached to the organ. So when you remove the physical organ, you're not removing the whole organ from your body. I mean, the channel's still there, the space that it occupied is still there, And let's take this even further. We just started talking about the three energies of the three postnatal energies that we come into this world with, consciousness, functionality, and chi. Well, when you remove the physical organ, you're removing part of the functionality. So the consciousness and the chi and part of the functionality is still there. You didn't remove everything. And we just talked about the three energies: consciousness, functionality, and chi. So when you remove that finite physical form, that gallbladder or that spleen, you're not removing the whole organ in East Asian medicine, right? You removed part of the form, right? There's still the channel and the meridian still there, and the space that it occupied is still there, and all its connections to all the other organs are still there. So you really just remove part of the functionality, and the consciousness and the chi are still there. So there's still a huge part of the organ that's still there. Okay, so let's think about consciousness. How do you define consciousness, and how do you know that you're conscious? Well, there's a couple things that go with consciousness. One, it doesn't have a form, right? You can't point to it and say, hey, there's my consciousness. And the other thing is, it seems to have feelings attached to it. So one way you can look at this is phantom limbs. People who have limbs that are amputated, they swear they can feel those limbs, that they're still there. And that's consciousness. It's like this energetic blueprint. It's like this energetic blueprint that's still there. Okay, let's look at everything that we talked about so far. So taking all that together, what does it mean? Well, first, everything in the body is necessary. Second, the physical part of the organ is more than just that finite definition in Western medicine. And third, every organ has three energies to it. Taking that all together, what does it mean? Well, first, everything in the body is necessary. Second, you have a physical organ that is more than just that finite definition that we hear about in Western medicine. It includes the meridian, it includes the space around it, it includes all the connections. So there's more to the physical organ than just that one finite organ as defined in Western medicine. And then third, every organ has three energies associated with it, which is consciousness, functionality, and then chi, the movement of functionality. The communication between consciousness and form is done through chi. And then the fourth thing is that when you remove that finite definition of an organ as you see it in Western medicine, you're only removing a part of that organ. You're not removing the whole thing. And so the consciousness and the chi are still there. Only a part of the functionality has been removed. And that is why, you don't get complete failure right away. Failure happens over time. Failure are those symptoms you get when the organ isn't functioning well. And for many of us, it's why the organ was removed in the first place. So after you remove an organ, the pieces of the functionality that was handled by this organ usually don't get replaced. Over time, the rest of the body becomes so fatigued trying to replace the functionality, and the body is so resilient it can take time to experience this fatigue. But as the fatigue increases, the symptoms become more and more severe. To address this and to help improve your health, look at addressing one of the three energy centers: consciousness, chi, or functionality. So I bet you were wondering why I was even talking about the three energy centers. Well, now you know. Of the three, the one that's the easiest to understand is functionality. And functionality is, what the organ does. And there's two ways to address functionality. The first way is to try and replace the missing functionality. And the second way is to reduce the burden on the organ and the channel. So here's an example. With the gallbladder, part of the function of the gallbladder is to break down fats. And to help replace that functionality, you can add in enzymes to break down fats, or you can eat vinegar because that helps break down fats, or any of the supplements with betaine in it. So that's one way to help replace the functionality of breaking down fats. Now, the second way is to reduce the burden on the organ. So for the gallbladder, that could be eating fewer fats or replacing your fats with healthier fats. Okay, so let's look at the next type of energy, consciousness. And so let's look at the spleen to understand consciousness of an organ. Now, to really understand consciousness of an organ, you might need to talk to an East Asian medical provider. But let's talk about what you feel when the spleen gets run down. So when the spleen gets run down, you get fatigued, but you also may experience anxiety. And the most common way of running down the consciousness of the spleen is through overthinking. And that could be you overanalyzing or feeling analysis paralysis and unable to come to a decision. So for this particular situation, for the spleen, one thing that you can do that can help get your mind back under control is going to be meditation. And the thing is, when you're in that anxiety phase, it can be hard to meditate. So I take baby steps. Okay, so I have a series out here called 3 Steps to Improve Your Meditation that can really help out if you're just trying to get that anxiety back under control so that you can start meditating again. Okay, so the last energy center is chi. So how about if we do the spleen again? Now, I'm going to talk about food because food's like the best and the easiest way to improve your chi. Now, if you take my class on Chinese nutritional therapy, you're going to be able to do this for yourself and you're going to understand why it works because you're going to become your own healthcare guru. But if you haven't taken my class, here's something to think about. When you look at chi, sweet things, too much sweet can break down the chi of the spleen. So a simple thing you could do is reduce your simple sugars and watch your carbs. And you can also eat other foods that can help build up your spleen channel. To get some ideas on those foods, check out the episodes in the Chinese nutrition playlist or go out to best-acupuncture.com to check out the classes on Chinese nutritional therapy and maybe sign up for one. So the thing that doesn't happen when you have an organ removed is you don't get help on how to keep your body healthy. There are 3 energetic layers to the organ: the consciousness, the chi, and the functionality. And you can address any one of these areas to improve your health and wellness. Now, if you need some ideas on how to do that, check out my classes on my website, best-acupuncture.com, on Chinese nutrition, the ABCs of Chinese nutrition, so you too can become your own healthcare guru. Or schedule an appointment with an East Asian medical provider in person or through a teleappointment. Okay, so until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.